Hey dudes, welcome to Splat from the Past, the only 80s themed horror and sci-fi show where things could get totally radical. Now today, I will be welcoming a vastly underrated character actor, Tony Abatemarco. You may remember him. He was in such classic films as True Believer, Sleeping with the Enemy, Larry Cohen's It's Alive 3, Island of the Alive. His first movie is one I want to ask about. I hope he's got good stories about it because there's no information about it on the internet. Charlie Band's The Alchemist. I love that movie. He's like the only person I could find from that movie. And I'm having him on the show today to talk about all that stuff. And I can't wait. He's a great New York character actor. So, here is my interview with Tony Abatemarco. First off, I'd like to say welcome to the show. It's such a great honor. Thank you for taking the time this morning.
My pleasure.
And going back in time, did you gravitate toward acting early on?
Yeah. Starting at 14, when I was on sort of the cusp of juvenile delinquency, a friend of mine at school said to me, they're doing a play, why don't we go and audition for it? And I said, no, I don't want to do that. And he said, no, come on. I think we'd be good doing it. So we went and auditioned for Mr. Rock, doing his production of Our Town, of course, what other show does every 14 to 17-year-olds in America do. Mm-hmm. And I auditioned. I got in. I got cast as Emily's father. Mm-hmm. And within a week, I went to my family and said, this is what I want to do with the rest of my life.
Wow. And how
which they tried desperately to talk me out of it and say, no, our family needs a dentist. We want you to be a dentist. And I said, no, we'll just have to put that on the shelf because I want to act. So I started acting and had a ball, threw myself into it 100%, changed my grade point average immediately, stopped hanging out with friends who were stealing cars and sniffing glue. And here I am.
Wow. And how old were you at that time?
14.
You were 14. Wow. And so from there, you did drama in high school?
Yeah. Subsequently, I won the oratorical contest. I did Patrick Henry's Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death. And I did theater almost full-time from then on. At 17, I started working with a Long Island community theater group that worked in a library. This is work I used to go and see, made up predominantly of adults. And I played Pedro in Tennessee Williams' Night of the Iguana. And I used to go out with them afterwards and sit and listen to their stories, all the adults. And I was hooked. I was totally hooked, and I knew that I was going to be doing this. So I went to Fordham University at Lincoln Center my first year of college. Mm-hmm. I acted in plays, and I got leads in many of the plays that year. Then I transferred to the School of Fine Arts at Boston University. And after 2.5 years of that, I left school without a degree and started working professionally. I went to Arena Stage in Washington and Williamstown. So I was working predominantly in the Northeast and getting good work, getting important roles. At Williamstown, I did 2 summers at Williamstown, and my second summer there, I actually was in Richard Wilbur's world premiere translation of The Learned Ladies. Mm-hmm. At the Williamstown Theater Festival with a bunch of New York actors. And had my equity card. I was studying. I went back to school. I went to school for essentially graduate work. I was in the advanced acting program at Juilliard, where I guess you could say I put some finishing touches on the polish.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was graduating from Juilliard, a director, David Schweitzer, who I had worked with in Williamstown, called me the week I was graduating and said, I'm directing a show at the Mark Taper Forum, and I need you. Can you be here in 3 days? So I skipped graduation and came to LA.
Wow.
26 at that point. And one job led to another. I met my partner at the time, husband now. We've been together for 42 years.
Congratulations.
And that's sort of the long view.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And so when you were taking all these acting classes in college and what have you, was there anybody in them that went on to become hugely successful?
Sure. At Boston University, there was Paul Rubens, also known as
Pee Wee Herman.
There was Alfre Woodard,
wow,
who's been nominated for some Academy Awards. She's also in the Hollywood issue of Vanity Fair for her work in Clemency. Let's see, who else? Richard Frank, who was my very best friend at Juilliard. Richard Frank went on to do Milos Forman's Amadeus. He played the priest, the father confessor to Salieri. And then he went on to work with Jamie Lee Curtis and Richard Lewis in their show Anything But Love, television. I think that was for 3 seasons.
Right.
But very sadly for me and for the world, Richard passed away of AIDS in 1995. Yeah, there have been some of my colleagues at school have done incredibly well.
Yeah, I met Paul Rubens last year at a horror convention. Such a sweet man.
He's terrific. Paul is great. One of my first jobs in L.A., actually, that first summer I came out, aside from doing theater, was minding his cat. I spent 10 days while he went home to visit his family in Miami, minding his cat and having a ball, just looking around at the trinkets and the puppets that he had in his apartment, as well as his cat. Anyway, so yeah, Paul's great. I love him. We don't see each other very much. I think the last dinner we had was a couple of years ago. But, yeah, he's a terrific guy.
That's so cool. When you were doing plays, did you make it all the way to Broadway?
Well, I directed on Broadway. I did shows off-Broadway. I mean, the first show I did off-Broadway was an adaptation that a friend of mine and I had put together of a one-man show of Diary of a Madman by Nikolai Gogol. And that's the first show I did off-Broadway. I had the company that I was a part of, my graduating class from Juilliard, had been chosen by Joe Papp to move our production of Spring Awakening, not the musical, the original, which had been directed by Liviu Chule. We were moving it to the Public Theater, but that summer I was in L.A. and working at the Mark Taper Forum, so I skipped out on that opportunity. So I wasn't part of that, but I did do Diary of a Madman the following summer. And then I directed on Broadway. I got to direct this unbelievably great Miss Julie Harris in Bill Luce's Lucifer's Child on Broadway. William Luce had also written The Belle of Amherst for Julie, which had been a huge success. And this was the 3rd or 4th show that they did together. And Julie requested me, which was a quantum leap for me. I was 37 when I first met her because Julie was an avid theater goer. And whenever she was in L.A., she would go and see theater big and small. And at the time, I was working both big and small. I was directing The House of Blue Leaves at the Pasadena Playhouse with Buck Henry and Lou McClanahan and Francis Conroy and Corey Webb. Fantastic production at the Pasadena Playhouse. And simultaneously, I was performing in a play called Camera Lenta, Low Motion, at the tiny 49-seat theater stages in Hollywood, which ran for 6 months, and that moved to Off-Broadway to the Cherry Lane Theater. So Julie came to see both of those in the same week, and we were introduced, and I praised her to the skies, of course, and she did likewise. And she said, I want to work with you. And invited me to her house the following summer on Cape Cod, and we talked projects, and she then requested me to direct her in a pre-Broadway and Broadway production of Lucifer's Child just 2 years later. I always like to tell my students this story, particularly the part of it. The night Julie came to see me in Camera Lenta, she and Tom Waits and his wife were the only people in the audience. And there were 3 of us on stage. And when we heard that there were only 3 people in the audience, we asked the director, we said, look, is it possible that we could skip tonight's performance since there's only 3 people? And he, being a mad Argentinian who was quite brilliant, screamed at us, no, you're going on tonight. You have got to go on. Little did we know that we were going to be performing it for Julie Harris, Tom Waits, and his wife. So we went on, and afterwards, that's when all of our lives changed. At least my life changed. So I tell my students, it doesn't matter. You never know. If there's only 2 people in the audience, they could change your life. So,
yeah.
Don't get all bummed out that you're not being appreciated by throngs.
Yeah, isn't that phenomenal? Wow.
Yeah. So that's how I got to Broadway, and then that was in 1991. Julie got a Tony nomination for it, and then 4 years later, producers approached me and said, we want to shoot this. We have a deal with A&E Television to shoot Lucifer's Child, and we'd like you to do it. So I got a chance to direct her for the televised version. And that year, when it came out, it was the largest home order for a dramatic show that A&E had ever produced.
Wow. That's cool.
So I got to work with Julie once again, and this time in an adaptation for television, which was an amazing experience.
Wow.
So it's been a good life. It's been a really good life in the creative world.
Yeah. Let's get into the movies and TV shows. According to IMDb, your first movie was a movie I actually love, and whenever I bring it up to people, no one's ever heard of it. The Alchemist.
Oh my God! Yeah, yeah. I got funny stories about that one. We shot in the middle of the night up in Valencia. It was freezing. When I originally auditioned for the movie, their first set designer, production designer, actually had a plan to have me basically naked except for a little loincloth, and to coat my body in a glaze so that I looked like this. At the time, I was pretty fit and muscular, and he wanted me to be this glazed statue, glass statue that came to life. And then, so, that was an interesting experience. And then they fired him. And they got someone else who made prosthetic masks. And it wasn't just me, it was a group of us. And they put us in. That was my first experience with having my entire head coated in a latex mask
Yeah.
with straws up my nose and glittering eyes that they put in my as contacts in my eyes, and then the middle of the night we were shooting, and they led me out to this hillside, and they said, "Okay, put this cough medicine, this red cough medicine, in your mouth, and when you hear action, lower the branch that you're sitting behind and spit the cough medicine out." So that was my debut in the movies. Action, I lowered the branch and I spit the cough medicine out of the lens. Very exciting, very exciting. For a Juilliard-trained classical actor, really a thrill.
Yeah, when I was a kid, my parents were taping some movies off of HBO for me, and they left the tape running, and that was on there, and I still have that tape to this day.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
I can get a copy of it. Maybe I'll take you to lunch and you can give me a copy of it.
It's almost on its last legs. How was Charlie Band as a director?
Oh wow! How was he? Let me try and remember. The funny thing is, I don't remember much. I remember the experience. I remember that, I was excited to be doing it. I remember that he had a reputation for the work that he was doing. But I don't remember much in terms of any kind of rapport. That changed later as I got more comfortable with the milieu of camera work.
Right.
But to begin with, I was a theater actor, and I was so used to the long, 3 to 6 to 8 week process of working with the director on a daily basis and really, carving out character and trajectories, emotional trajectories, and all of that stuff. So movies were so brand new to me, it threw me the first few gigs that I got, because it was like, wait a minute, all they're saying to me is, stand here, hit your mark, and action. And there wasn't much rehearsal. So, it was a completely different process. And it definitely took me a while. I finally started getting the hang of it. And one of the people I credit with it, with my starting to understand what that process was and how it differs from the theater, was a friend of mine, Richard Brestoff, who has been teaching at Irvine, at the University of Irvine for many years, and has published some terrific books about the process. Great Acting Teachers and Their Methods is one of his books. Another one, the one that really clued me into what I needed to do in order to equip myself for working in front of a camera, was The Camera Smart Actor. And that book really, really gave me insights that I didn't understand prior to. It really helped me understand that, all those people that are surrounding you on a set are not there to watch your performance. They're there to do their jobs. And their job basically is to focus on my performance. Their job is to focus on the actors' performances and what they're doing. The actors' job's really, it's really up to us to, for the most part, to figure out what we're doing, whether we have a significant role that has an emotional journey, or if we're just facilitators to a given scene. So I started to really understand, okay, they're here to like me and to get the best sort of picture out of me, not necessarily to take me through the step-by-step process of what the character is going through. And I started to understand it from a technical point of view, and I started to understand it from a personal point of view. So that changed everything for me. Then I started to really feel confident about how to approach acting for the camera. And it was quite different from acting on stage. Acting on stage, the entire product ultimately is going to be in your hands as an actor. You're going to be standing up there when the audience is in place and the curtain goes up and the lights go up. It's going to be your job to take the audience on the journey. No matter how much rehearsal there's been and how much tech there's been involved, it's up to you. It's not going to be corrected in post. You're in the moment, and it's up to you. So that was, I have a story about a guest spot that I did, but I don't know if you've got the time for me to tell you it.
Of course.
A guest spot that was really, really intense and really taught me a huge lesson. Shall I tell it now?
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, so I was guest star on Scarecrow and Mrs. King, and I had 6 days' work ahead of me. And the work that I had to do was very, shall we say, techno-heavy in terms of the dialogue. I was playing a Russian collaborator spy. I wasn't Russian, I was American, but I was collaborating with the Russians and playing a spy. And opposite me, the first day of the shoot, was William Schaller, the great William Schaller. A real pro and somebody who I've been watching from the time I was 7 years old on television. So that was threatening to me to a certain extent. This was my first guest starring role. And there was no emotional way into this character. This character was spouting just techno jargon in this first scene that they were going to shoot. They called me to the set at noon. They didn't get to the scene until 8 o'clock that night. We were already in overtime. And the director, who was fairly new to the process of American television, he was a British director, was taking too much time, and the crew was not having it. They were upset. So by the time they got to my scene, which was the last scene of the day, I had to walk through. We were actually on location at the Sportsman's Lodge. We were shooting there in the valley. I had to walk through a beaded curtain into the camera's lens and basically start talking to William Schaller, all this techno jargon. And as much as I rehearsed it on my own, and as much as we ran over the lines together that afternoon, in the moment, I froze. And that was for the first rehearsal, camera rehearsal. And they said, okay, let's try that again. And we tried it again, and I froze again, mid-sentence. And I started to hear the crew sort of cursing under their breaths and throwing apple boxes around and getting annoyed, which only made it worse. By the time the director said, okay, let's just shoot it and not worry about the rehearsal, I was covered in sweat. I walked through the curtain, and literally it was like flop sweat. It was running down my face. My shirt was soaking wet. They had to stop, change my shirt, get makeup in to mop me up and to restore me to some, matte look for the camera. We went through it about 7 or 8 times, and by then I was still going up. I thought, this isn't for me. Take me out into the parking lot and shoot me. I'm done. This is my first guest spot, and I'm failing miserably. It's horrible. This is torture. We never made it fully through the whole thing. We did it in bits and pieces. When we came back the next day, it was a lighter day for me. It was just physical work. I had to skulk around an apartment building looking for somebody, and I didn't have any dialogue, so I started to relax a little bit. But all the while, in the couple of months before it aired, I was terrified that what I was going to see on camera was going to be a complete nightmare. I was going to see that first scene, and it was going to be a total embarrassment. And it came on, and it was good. It was really riveting. The stakes were really high. It was all put together in post. And because I was so freaked out that first time and so nervous about doing a good job and so inept in getting through it, they just cut it so that it looked really good.
Mm-hmm.
Back and forth between me and William Shallard, who was just listening to what I had to say, and his expressions were clear, and the stakes for me were so high. I was like, oh my God, I look like the young Sal Mineo. This is amazing. So I learned a huge lesson, and that is the lesson of post-production.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't get it right on camera, they'll fix it in post.
Right.
It was an amazing, amazing lesson to learn, because it really relaxed me from then on. I understood that, like, okay, I made a mistake. Can I try that again? And it really helped.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of guest starring roles, you were on One Day at a Time.
Yes, I was. I started on One Day at a Time as a stand-in.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that a couple of times as a stand-in. And then finally, they gave me the job. Pat Harrington, who played the janitor, so the building's janitor, and was delightful. Pat Harrington, in that particular episode, the story was that he had been hired by a big corporation and was getting a tremendous paid promotion to move to this corporation to become a facilities manager.
Mm-hmm.
So they hired me as the temporary replacement, or the replacement in the building for Pat Harrington. So I had one scene basically with Bonnie Franklin, and with my clipboard, and I was very officious, and et cetera, et cetera. And once again, I learned a big lesson. We did the first table read. I wasn't that funny.
Mm-hmm.
You only have a couple of days on a sitcom to really, and sometimes a couple of hours, to prove that you're funny enough. Excuse me. I thought, well, it's okay. I'll tomorrow's another day. By the end of the week, they had changed the scene so that I was basically in a lineup
mm-hmm.
of other potential replacements for the janitorial position. And I think my scene turned out to be like a single word, something like, yes, sir.
Yeah.
That was about it.
Yeah.
So that was another early learning experience of, get it right the first time, make them laugh. Otherwise, you're going to wind up in a lineup of other potential janitors.
Yeah. How about guest starring on Stingray?
Stingray. Where did we shoot that? I think we shot that in Calgary, in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, the old days when, actors who were guest starring got first-class travel plans, picked up by limousines. You rode first class on the plane. You were put up in nice hotels. Everything was chauffeured, and, these were the old days.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I got shot on Stingray. I think I was in the middle of some nefarious activity, and they walked in and shot me in the living room. That was fun.
Jeff
Yeah, and shooting in Calgary. I mean, that's one of the amazing things about working in film and TV production is that you do get to parts of the world that you never thought you'd ever see or imagined would happen. I worked in South Korea. I've worked in Paris. I've worked in Italy. I've worked in Canada. I've worked all over the country, including one of my least favorite places, and I'm sure somebody who's listening will turn off your show when they hear this, in Las Vegas, for 14 days in Las Vegas, which was hellish. So, I've gotten to travel a lot and work in places that I consider part of my education as an adult.
Mm-hmm. Also, Jeff Conaway was in that episode. So sad what happened to him. He was such a talented guy.
I know. Well, this is, oh boy, life. What are you going to do? I mean, this is people, great people, talented people, amazing people, famous people have their own trajectory in their lives. So, I mean, very sad.
Yeah. How about working on It's Alive 3 with Larry Cohen?
As a young actor, I really, really admired the work that, oh, dear God, his name just flew out of my head. That's a terrible thing. The lead in the movie.
Michael Moriarty.
That's it. Michael Moriarty's early work on stage was so significant, and he was considered one of the people to watch. Started out around the same time as Sam Waterston and others who had a longer shelf life, if you will. Michael Moriarty was somebody I really, really admired, and then I got a chance to work with him on that movie, and it was a great experience. I really, really liked it. He was a total mensch. He was a real sweetheart. That was a great experience. I think we shot in a hospital. We also shot down on the beach because I played a Cuban Coast Guard man who had helped rescue him, and because his boat had gone down, and we helped rescue him, and then brought him to a hospital. So we worked in several locations, and again, it was great. He invited us to his trailer. We had good conversations. He was what I like to call the real deal as far as an actor who knows how to collaborate and knows that, relationships with other actors count for something off camera. And, made us feel as important as he was, and he was the star. So that's a great thing. I've had the opposite experience, and those names shall remain unnamed, where actors have been, shall we say, less than kind.
Yeah.
And sometimes to the point of sabotage, which is deadly. Deadly.
I've heard many stories about him. Yeah. Many self-destructive stories about Michael Moriarty. Yeah.
But he wasn't that. He was not on the set and not with the other actors. And, maybe he was at that point where he had learned his lessons and, had he behaved badly before, he wasn't behaving badly when I worked with him.
Mm-hmm. I met Larry Cohen right at the end of his life. He was just a bitter curmudgeon.
And he was not somebody, I ran into him on the street a couple of years after, and he remembered me, and he knew my name, and we had a good conversation, and, it was not at all, there wasn't any sense of that. At least, he treated me like a friend and a collaborator.
That's good.
Yeah. And everybody's got a different story about who they've worked with. Some people talk about the late Kirk Douglas, how what a gentleman he was and how remarkable he was. And some people say negative things about him. And it's like, well, yeah, we all have different experiences. We're all human. So everybody, if you look at somebody the wrong way and you're in a position of power, they're not going to come away from that experience with happy tales about your humanity.
Mm-hmm. And you started working with Joseph Rubin, starting with True Believer, a movie I really like.
Yeah, got to work with him twice, and really, really loved working with him. We did True Believer. James Woods, I have to say, I had a couple of days on that movie shooting in San Francisco, and I have to say that James Woods was another person who may have a something of a negative reputation
Right.
But to me, he was a total sweetheart. When he saw, by that point in my career, I was really equipped. I knew what I was doing. I wasn't afraid on the set. I didn't fumble. I really had my work down. And I was also flexible enough, which was, not to toot my own horn too much, but that's what this interview was about. But I was at the point where I was confident enough to be able to be flexible. So our first scene together was a scene we walked down the hall after a hearing at a trial. I was playing an attorney, and he was too. And Robert Downey Jr., the three of us. We were walking down the hall, and he was trying to get me to either work more leniently toward his client or working for a plea bargain. I can't remember exactly what the situation was, but we did a first rehearsal, and our director, Joe Rubin, said, okay, so let's do tight on James for this. And James Wood said, no, forget me. He's doing really interesting work. Widen the camera, make sure you get him, because he's really doing, I like what he's doing. Mm-hmm. That made him a hero for me at that moment. So, so I got featured in a really nice way. And, that was thanks to him and his, championing the work that I was doing. So,
yeah.
Then I worked with Joe Rubens on Sleeping with the Enemy. And, Sleeping with the Enemy was another experience of learning. I mean, we shot that in North Carolina. And the experience of working on that movie, it was one day's work on that movie. Mm-hmm. I have made, because that movie starred Julia Roberts,
yeah,
and because it touched a nerve, I guess, with so many people, I have made more money from that movie than practically anything else I've ever done. To this day, every quarter, I still get a few $100s. Now, that movie was 1990, I think, 1991.
Yeah.
I still get a few $100s every quarter from that movie, from its residuals. So that's an incredible thing. I can only imagine what the guys who worked on Star Wars or Ghostbusters or, any movie that was, a classic mega hit, how their residuals come in. I mean, it's just, that was one day's work on a movie, and it still buys me some good groceries.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great. Yeah, it's the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, exactly.
How about when you played the priest in Midnight Cabaret?
Strange experience. Really strange. I had friends who worked on it. Norbert Weiser's a friend, and it was strange because the audition process, it was one of those audition processes where, I waited for 3.5 hours to be seen. And after 3.5 hours, every bit of preparation or, looseness or kindness in me had evaporated. So I went into audition, and I was angry. And the director, who was Italian, basically picked up on my anger and got excited. Because I was feeling something. And he cast me as the priest, which had no anger in it at all. But, yeah, we shot that, I think, somewhere up in, it wasn't Calabasas, but it may have been. And it was a strange movie to shoot. It was very strange.
Yeah, I've interviewed Tom Matthews and Lisa Hart Carroll on the show. Both two really nice people. Mm-hmm. You were on the very first episode of Tales from the Crypt.
Yeah, Walter Hill. Walter Hill directed that. And that was, again, for me, that meant this was a prestige project because it was Walter Hill directing. And if my memory serves me correctly, and I may be wrong about this, so forgive me, Casting Directors Association, if I get this wrong, but that may have been a cast by Barbara Clayman, who's no longer with us. But Barbara was a fan of mine and brought me in for a number of projects. And yeah, I was so excited to be working on that because it was Walter Hill who was directing it. I mean, basically, I had to learn the Miranda rights, and then I had a second scene after that. So it's basically me playing a detective, arresting somebody, and then going further into an interview with them. Yeah. So yes, I did that, and that was something that happens when you have a reputation, or someone who has a reputation for fine work. Mm-hmm. It raises the bar in terms of wanting to work with them, wanting to prove that you could do it. Now, as a young actor, I made a couple of big mistakes. I had an opportunity to audition for Marty Scorsese for the movie The Last Temptation of Christ. And stupidly, of course I went in, I believe that was Marion Doherty who does all his casting. Can't remember exactly. But anyway, I went in, and, I talked about how reverential I felt about Marty Scorsese's work, and it was the wrong thing to do. It was just, I sounded like a fanatical fan. And, I never got through into the inner sanctum to actually audition for Scorsese because I took the wrong approach. Mm-hmm. So, I wasn't professional. I was a fan. And I didn't get in. So,
oh boy.
Lesson learned.
Now, here's a movie. It's very interesting to me because it had such a great cast, but it took a few years to get released, and then it got...
I know what you're going to ask.
It got no attention, yes. It's Town and Country.
Yeah. Peter Chelson, I love Peter Chelson. He started as an actor in Great Britain, mm-hmm. and so he really understands the process that actors go through. He's not just a technical guy. He gets it. He really gets it from the smallest nuance. He understands how to talk to actors. I worked with him first because my friends Barbara Cohen and Mary Gail Arts cast a movie that was supposed to be directed by him, and they brought me in as a reader. It was supposed to be directed by him. It was supposed to star Dustin Hoffman. There were a lot of supposed to. I got a chance to read the Dustin Hoffman role with actors who hadn't yet hit, but were on the verge, who were being passed around, young actors who were being passed around from studio to project because they were about to hit big. That included Rachel Weisz, mm-hmm. Anne Heche, Vince Vaughn, Matt Damon, a lot of actors who were brand new, who were young, who I didn't even know. I had never heard of them yet. But they were coming in because they were hot. Mm-hmm. And they were being passed around and being seen by everybody for major projects. So I got a chance to work. It was maybe 3 or 4 days of reading with actors. And interestingly, usually the readers, I got a chance to be on the other side of the desk, as mm-hmm. I was not in the position of auditioning. I was actually auditioning others. So I got a chance to hear the conversations about what actors do right and wrong, how they might be right for the role or might not be right for the role, etc. I got insight into all that, and I thank the late Barbara Cohen and the very alive Mary Gail Art for giving me that opportunity. But I also got friendly with Peter Chelsea. Had to sort of understand each other a bit. So that when he was doing the movie Town and Country, he gave me a role. And the role was to play the partner of Warren Beatty, the partner of Warren Beatty in an architectural firm, a very major architectural firm that was on the verge of winning the highest award architects give, which is the Pritzker Prize. So it was an exciting possibility of being the partner to Warren Beatty in this big movie that had something like a maybe $19 million budget. It was a big movie. And historically famous for the problems that arose. It was a majorly top-heavy star cast. It included Warren Beatty, it included Goldie Hawn, Diane Keaton. It even had Charlton Heston in it, Gary Sanders. It was a big cast, very top-heavy in celebrity. But it was trouble. The original writers changed hands. The producers, there were 5 producers in on it. My dear friend, and I'm still grieving, Buck Henry, who I had worked with on stage, directing him in House of Blue Leaves, and then acting side by side with him in Kingfish here in L.A. and at the Public Theater in New York. We were very close. Buck came in as one of the new writers on it, and there was trouble. There was trouble all along the way. There was disagreements on the set. There were lots of things that were going wrong. So it was about a 2-year process. I was in on the first 3 days. I was in on the middle 2 days, and I was there for the last 2 days of that 2-year process. And things had, by the time we got to those last moments, things had deteriorated very badly. Grudges, people not talking, etc., etc. And I'm not going to name names or say who or what was at fault, but there were some significant problems.
Yeah, this business is such a crapshoot, and it's unfortunate when you work so intensely on something and then it just crashes and burns like that, you know?
Unbelievable. I mean, you know, oh, boy, that was, you know, there's many things to say about it, but I can't say them publicly.
It's okay.
But okay. Peter, I remained friends with Peter. In fact, a few years ago, I did, believe it or not, you know, a lot of great directors and cinematographers wind up in between projects in commercials. And we don't know that necessarily because commercials don't have credits that roll. But great cinematographer who had won the Academy Award for Avatar, and Peter worked on a commercial that I shot for Kay Jewelers, which got a lot of play, changed my bank account. I played the master jeweler. So, you know, I've had the opportunity to work with Peter a number of times. I also spent 3 hours opposite Sharon Stone for the movie The Mighty. We didn't shoot anything. She was just considering taking the role of the mom in the movie, and which she wound up doing. But she wanted to have a conversation with Peter about it. So we sat, read through the scenes, and once again, I was a reader opposite Sharon Stone.
Wow.
And 3 hours in a theater on La Cienega. with Peter and Sharon Stone, just going through the script, and she wound up doing the movie. So we've had a nice working partnership, and
that's great.
I like it a lot. Yeah.
So are you still acting these days?
Oh yeah. I think it's a must for me. At this point, I'm such a hyphenate. I act, I direct, I write, I produce, and I teach.
Mm-hmm.
And, when people ask me, so what do you do? I have to say, I act, I direct, I write, I produce, and I teach. But it's a blessing because as absurd as it sounds, it's all those things interface with each other. All those things feed each other. Even teaching, teaching has given me the opportunity, teaching for 15 years at USC and now at Emeritus College, gives me the opportunity to keep reviewing and learning. And it's a cliche, but it's true. When you teach, you often learn more than your students, because you have to be up on your game, and it helps me review and expand my knowledge of what I do. Mm-hmm. So that's been wonderful. I published my collected plays last year.
Nice.
And they were the 4 plays that have been produced, so that was a great journey, and I did several readings in bookstores and things, and sold a number of copies, so that's been great. But yes, back to your original question, yes, I'm still acting. Last year, I did 3 shows on stage. Mm-hmm. I did Arthur Miller's The Price. I did a play called Beast on the Moon, in which I basically played the narrator.
Right.
And I once again revisited Sandra Singh Lowe's Sugar Plum Fairy, in which I play a number of characters. And it's a Christmas show, so we have a lot of fun doing it. And this year we did it again in December down at East West Players in Little Tokyo. So yeah, I'm still acting and still auditioning, and it's a great life.
Yeah. Do you have any upcoming projects that you want to talk about?
I'm delving back into, I just came back from India. I had an opportunity to go on a tour of temples in India, and it's a lifelong dream, and I finally fulfilled it thanks to my friend David Carino in New York, who had lined up an individual tour with just me and him and a guide and a driver. So it was really amazing and very handheld and very, it was an experience I'll never forget. But when I came back to LA, it's a rigorous journey to get to India and to tour through it. I was feeling a little like, okay, now I've got to return to some primary source in me. And I kept a journal in India, and I'm starting to devise stories. I've recorded about 33 of my stories that I've written, some of which have been published. And I'm looking at putting together an evening right now of telling my stories.
One-man show.
Some of the autobiographical ones. So
one-man show.
It's just in the nascent stages of it right now. The stories are complete, but how to frame them and give them a context is all still in the works. I'm talking to potential collaborators, and so that's a little pot on the stove that I've got simmering right now. And my agents are happy I'm back, so they can start sending me out again. And the actor's life, you never know. Something could turn up tomorrow. An offer might come in, or an opportunity to audition for something that could change everything in a matter of minutes. So, that keeps you very alert. And so I'm trying to stay alert.
That's great, Tony. Well,
And the final pitch, or the final thing that I'll say, is that I'm also co-artistic director at the Skylight Theater in Los Feliz here in LA, and we've had a great run. In the last couple of years, we've been producing some really noteworthy work that's all original, that comes from either our stable of resident writers. We've got Lee Blessing now, who is a Pulitzer and Tony nominated writer who is actually shepherding our resident writers through their processes, and we're producing plays from our own stable of writers, which is really exciting, getting a lot of great notices for those. So that's the producing hat that is vibrating.
That's great, Tony. Well, I hope that all goes well for you. It sounds like everything is going well for you, and I thank you for coming on the show today.
Tommy, it's been a pleasure. Thank you. And, apologies for starting out. I haven't had my first full cup of coffee yet. So
it's okay.
Starting out needing a reminder. But I'm glad to have had this opportunity. You're a prince. Thanks for letting me tell my stories.
Thank you so much, sir. You have yourself a great day.
You too. And I hope to catch up with this once you put it together.
I sure will.
All right.
Okay.
Enjoy, Tommy.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Well, there you have it. Tony Abatemarco. Ain't he a cool dude? Great guy. Great stories. Passionate about acting. If you like this video, everyone, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Add me as a friend on Facebook. Join my Tommy Kovac comedian page on Facebook. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram and all that fun stuff. Well, that's all the time we have this week on Splat from the Past. Until next time, this is Tommy Throwback Kovac saying, there's no shame in living in the past, because the present sucks. Later, dudes!